Okay, letting everybody in, taking off. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to our session. Spicy, how to make a show graphic that slaps. I know it's a Monday evening, so just so you know, we're also recording, so videos are optional. If you want to be doing your dishes in the back, that's totally fine. At the same time, if you do want to be seen to ask a question, please don't feel shy. You can just unmute yourself and ask questions. Um, I think we've still got people filling in. Um, just to introduce myself, my name is Elizabeth Gunawan. You can call me Betty. I'm the founder and leader of Kiss Witness. We're an independent theater company based in London. And I've also got a real life authentic marketer on the call. We've got Sandy, who works on marketing from Kakilang's side. Maybe if you want to introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, hi, I'm Sandy. I'm head of marketing and audience development for Kakilang, and I actually do all the hands-on social media content and all their marketing, all the leaflet distribution, etc. So yeah, it'd be really interesting to hear if you got any question for us today.
Great. Just so you know, this session is going to be recorded so that we can upload it and put it on our website. So if you ever want to go back to any of the material, you can do so. Let's go ahead and get started. Maybe a little shout out. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. We've got Yen, Alina, Aikaj, Denise, Sally, Tallulah, Tingning. And my Mandarin's not good enough to know how to read your name, but thanks so much for joining us. Right. As always, if you do want to ask any questions, you can use the chat function or you can unmute yourself and speak. Please don't feel shy. So, how do you make a good show graphic? In fact, what makes a great show graphic? Just to warm us up, I'm going to go through a selection that I picked up before this session, and I'll discuss a little bit maybe what makes them great, all in different ways, and perhaps you can also put in your thoughts in the chat. Here's one that I think a lot of people have seen in the London Underground, Cabaret, musical at the Kit Kat Club. What's great about this graphic? I think it has a strong image. There's a human looking at you with quite a meaningful look, I feel. Everything about the way that they're dressed also gives you a sense of a world. It's giving 1930s Weimar cabaret. It's immediately recognizable. It's also definitely playing to existing fans of the musical by really highlighting the title and even the allusion to the Kit Kat Club. Um, it includes all of the five-star reviews that it received. Also, there's definitely a really intentional choice of colors here. It's kind of giving luxury, it's giving period. Yeah, checking the chat in case anybody had any other thoughts. So that's one example, Cabaret. Here's another example that's an original work and more something that's in the fringe. This was a show that was in Edinburgh Fringe by Jessica Ashkenazi called Tit Clown. What's great about this show graphic? It's obviously really, really different. I think what's great is it's shocking and it's immediately memorable. You could say and maybe criticize that it's super literal. It's called Tit Clown and it's a woman, with like faces on her boobs. But actually, because it's so literal, it's really easy to get what the takeaway is. Also, it's funny, it's a conversation starter. Again, you could criticize the image and say it's a little bit gratuitous, but also her body is not retouched, so it makes a certain statement about a female body. So again, they're two really different show graphics, and they're great in very, very different ways. And I would argue they are quite effective in reaching the audience in really different ways. Here's another one. It's also from Edinburgh Fringe. It's called Everything I See, I Swallow. I think this is a great image. Why? Again, it's shocking and super memorable. Also, it tells me, I think, so much about what the show is going to be. It tells me that the show is going to some extent be about a woman. It also tells me the genre. It's going to be circus, but probably with a kind of twist. I sense that like sexuality and eroticism is a big part of what the show is. And the show is, in fact, the story about a mother and daughter and how the mother basically finds out about what her daughter has been posting online. So, all of the things that I got from the image is in line with, again, what people can expect from watching the show. Here's another one. This is also at the end of the reference. It says, it's called A Young Man Dressed as a Gorilla, Dressed as an Old Man, Sits Rocking in a Rocking Chair for 56 minutes and then leaves. One performance only, arrive early, sell out expected. Got the date and everything. Why is this one great? I think it's a joke, it's funny, again, it's a conversation starter. Also, it tells you exactly what to expect, which is that a young man dressed as a gorilla, dressed as an old man, will sit in a rocking chair for 56 minutes and then leave. So again, there are different ways to make a show graphic that captivates people. Sandy, which one is, again, I know it's completely subjective, but which one would you say is your favorite out of the four?
Well, I think the tick clown actually, because it's at a glance, I know straight away. Yeah, I know straight away, and I love the fact that you just need the QR code, and everything else is speaks itself. Nowadays, people don't remember a lot of attention, but they remember the title. They remember this is happening, and it's already in their head, thinking, "Oh, I'm going to look it up." I thought that was really strong visual. And equally, I think everything I see, I swallow is a very, very attractive image. Right
Yeah.
in there, everything you have, like with the reviews, a bit more like more information on the poster. But in general, your eye just goes straight to the image. And if you like that sort of kind of circus style things, it sticks to your head. So I think they're great.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, it's a good point also. Just they kind of make sense of themselves in their own aesthetic worlds, right?
Mm.
And again, if anybody does want to kind of leave any comments or any questions in the chat, please feel free. One last thing that I'll say about these images, again, sometimes it's obviously there, so you don't notice it. But notice how, again, with Cabaret, they include the start reviews with everything I
Mm.
see, I swallow. They do the same and add awards. All of these are really important because it's again another sell, a way for the makers of the show to say, oh, this is a high quality show. At the same time, you might have a show like A Young Man Dresses a Gorilla, Dresses an Old Man, where the point is that it's quite irreverent. And so it doesn't really quite work as well, probably, to have a bunch of five-star reviews. It kind of might even undermine the joke. So, what makes a great show graphic? It should be great, it should be interesting and stand out and look cool, sexy, expensive, and get butts in seats. But what does it actually mean? What I'm hoping to help you figure out is how to demystify that and turn it into something that you can actually do for your show. So, what makes a great show graphic? The first one, it should tell your story. It probably can't tell the story of your entire show, otherwise you wouldn't need to do the show. But it should tell a story. It should that is adjacent in some way to what the performance it is. Secondly, it should evoke the world of your performance. So if the world of your performance is comedic and bright and joyful, the graphic should do the same. Also, the opposite. If the world of your performance is quite terrifying and eerie and dark, it should do the same. Also, it should inform the audience on how to engage with the show. Again, should they come in ready to have fun? Should they come in ready to be challenged? Should they come in ready to kind of be comforted and calm? All of these things are, I think, we'll dive deeper into each of these bullet points and what you can do on a tangible level. I think that a great show graphic will combine what's familiar to the audience in their daily life, in their contemporary life, with the unfamiliar, which is the show. Presumably, you're working on a new show. So between what's familiar to the audience and what's unfamiliar to the audience, you want to make them intrigued to come see the show. Let's start with tells a story. Um, so these are some of the, uh, I would say, basic best practices with creating a show graphic. The first one is that you should choose a hero image. And you should use this hero image ideally throughout the lifetime of the show. I'm going to use an example from a theater piece that we created as Kiss Witness. It was a piece called Unforgettable Girl. It's a dark comedy. It's about a mail order bride delivered via Amazon Prime, and we all have to unpack that together. And the hero image that we use is the main character who also has this headdress that's made of deconstructed Barbie dolls. And it's kind of making a statement about also the deconstruction, the objectification, and violence against women's bodies. So we use this hero image throughout all of the marketing, both when the show premiered at Edinburgh Fringe, as well as when it transferred to London to Pleasance later. Um, One should also choose a clear color palette. Um, the color palette here was chosen because the show has kind of like an edgy quality, and the marketing team at the Pleasance wanted to go with something that was like a little bit vintage, and kind of a comedy, but with a bit of an edge. Uh, Thirdly, there should be a strong focal point, and the text should be legible. So, yeah, in this case, again, you just have one image to look at and one text. I would say, in terms of clear color palette and strong focal point and legibility, there's some improvements that can be made in this graphic, and I'll show you what we eventually do, because I would argue that actually this color palette, especially when we got to Edinburgh Fringe, it feels quite pale. It doesn't really evoke a strong sense of a world. It also just feels quite morose, but the show is actually very fast-paced, and and quite comedic, so it doesn't seem to kind of convey that very well. That it doesn't really allude very well to the kind of experience people might have the show. Everybody says that it's really important for a show graphic to have a human connection. Often it means that it should have a face. Again, rules are made to be broken, because if every um, show graphic just had a face, it would also be really boring. So there's also an interesting question there, which is how do you include a face while also adding a strong artistic proposition in the show that makes it just that makes it stick better. So with Unforgettable Girl, we ended up after that Pleasance performance doing an additional London run and also a run in Brighton. And so I had a chance to kind of redesign the poster. And I acted on the things that I felt like we didn't do strongly enough in the first performance. That I thought the color palette was actually not really conveying much of anything that's specific to the show. Whereas I decided to go with like a really, really hot pink that feels a little bit anarchic. It feels a little bit political. It feels a little bit Guerrilla Girls, which again is very much the spirit of the show. Um, Again, because the show is comedic, I also decided that even though we did choose to include kind of all of the reviews, it says multi-award winning trash theater, fresh from its Edinburgh Fringe 2023 run, with you know, a very trashy way of writing trash theater, which again, hopefully, kind of communicates that the show doesn't take itself too seriously, and so nobody should really come taking it very seriously. So um, I get things wrong too, and I continue to get them wrong. But for some reason, you're here listening to what I have to say about marketing. So um, hopefully that's helpful. Again, jokes. Ha ha ha. So another pro tip about a show graphic is that I believe that you can keep it cheap and cheerful. You can use your phone camera and you can use a free software like Photopea. So I'll show you another example that's to do with the show graphic that I created for our second show as Kiss Witness, which is called Stamping in the Graveyard. This show is quite different from Unforgettable Girl. It is an immersive show, so all the audiences get silent disco headphones. It's sort of about how at the end of the world, all that's left is this AI chatbot going through human memories. So it's actually a very nostalgic, apocalyptic, lonely, immersive show, and a very calm show, actually. Again, going for that human connection, I did end up just going with a face, um, my face. But again, there's an opportunity to use just the way that the image is treated and how the character is behaving to also convey the story. But before I go into that, I want to show, let me just restart my share. So, part of the messiness of my Finder, but I just want to show you guys all these photos for the image of Stamping in the Graveyard was taken by my flatmate on a Google Pixel. So we used the dark backdrop. Um, my very kind flatmate held a photo light for me. You don't even need to use a photo light. They're like 10 pounds on Amazon, but you can also literally just use a phone torch or any light that you have, put it in front of your face. And we created basically, I don't know if you can still see my screen, but we basically found the image that ended up being the image of the show. Um, I don't know if anybody here has ever heard of Photopea or has used Photopea, or maybe some of you have access or even know how to use Photoshop. But let me just fix my screen sharing one moment. Sorry. I just want to show you essentially how easy it is to make a show graphic. So you can see my entire screen now, right?
Yeah.
Great. So I'm going to go to Photopea. The link is photopea.com. There's loads of ads, which is why it's free. Um, enjoy that image of this guy's pecs. Um, I can click new project. And if I'm creating a show graphic, I generally always go for kind of A3 because one of the main things you want to make sure it works for is print, whereas for social media and for online, the images keep changing anyway. So I generally personally would always just go for a portrait image. 300 pixels per inch is a good DPI. Let's create this. Then I will take one of the images from, my pixel photo shoot, just port it in. So again, this is like a very, very simple, untreated image, yeah? Let's just So a little bit of background. I personally have no graphic design training. I just spend a lot of time kind of playing around with this. One of the easiest ways to play around with Photoshop is whatever image you have, just duplicate it and then change the layer type. Oh,
Mm.
interesting. It's different. It's another different image. So it's literally maybe just going through this and literally just playing around with it until you find something that kind of interests you. So for example, maybe I like that. Then I might create a new layer and I might choose a color that I like, for example, this purple. I'm going to fill that color and then again, I'm gonna play around with changing the Oh, already. That's a really different
Mm.
image from what's in the beginning to something potentially quite interesting. Something that I did as well is, for example, I'm going to search for stars. And this is a nice picture of like stars in the galaxy. It's gonna put it in here. Oh, it's real. Oops. Well, if I had more time, I would probably, whoops. I'm not used to for using Photopea anymore. Retransform. If I had more time, oh, just doing all kinds of things now. If I had more time, I would probably try to find uh, an image that's, more of an appropriate size so it doesn't get a warp. But for now, let's use this. How do I rotate it? There. So as you can probably tell a little bit from the slightly amateurish way that I'm going about this, I hope what you're seeing is that it's really, really accessible. Again, you don't need to be a graphic designer to be able to do this yourself, because I think a lot of the times we are working, without enough budget for a graphic designer. Um, and also you're all artists, so this is also part of your artistry, is playing around with creating a show image that is helping communicate what your practice is. Again, I might just go soft. Oh, that doesn't make a difference. That happens a lot. Hard. Oh, that's kind of interesting, maybe. I think it's a little bit too much, so maybe I'll reduce that to 50%. And so on and so forth. I guess what I hope is basically one thing leads to another, and the next thing you know, you have kind of quite a show graphic that could work really well for your show. That was a lot of information. I hope that little walkthrough was helpful. Any
Mm.
questions? Please pop them in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself and come in. Please don't be shy. Or yeah, Sandy, also, if you have any kind of other comments, feel free to share.
No, well, thanks for that walkthrough. I thought, exactly how I would have approached a project and just by messing around. And sometimes you'd be surprised to see what outcome you will get. So yeah, thank you for that. It's been really helpful.
Of course, and again, it's not at all to kind of be um, unappreciative of what graphic designers do, because what they do is great. But if you don't have the resources for a graphic designer, or if for whatever reason, like me personally now, I prefer to work on my show graphics myself.
Mm.
Um, Again, it's really just a choice. Um, I'll also show you a little bit more about how this show graphic has evolved over time. Again, hopefully it's helpful. This is the first show image that we had. I would say it feels a little bit full. Um, we had a lot of supporters, but they probably don't need to be in the poster because, again, it feels really full. I chose to use, it's called ASCII, I think, when the big uh, kind of typeface is created by a lot
Mm.
of little letters, which was quite fun. But at the same time, I realized that it's actually not very legible. And so when this was the poster for when we did the show at Voila Festival last year, but then when it went to Edinburgh Fringe, can you see? I chose a really big one because this one was for print. But I changed the text to basically something really, really legible, really easy to
Mm.
read, and it just says an immersive headphone journey to the end of the world. So hopefully, if people are just looking at it quickly, they'll know what to expect. Then, when we transferred from Edinburgh Fringe to Theatre 503, again, I changed it and simplify. I think this is probably the best of both worlds in terms of the typeface. It has a bit more of a personality while at the same time being readable. Of course, by then we already had a lot of reviews, so we kind of knew what to include, and otherwise the image is just really, really simple. And again, we kept using the same image throughout. Um, so this image is basically of the character, so I did it in costume. with contacts, which is again also part of the character's costume. So again, just this idea of even you or whoever is meant to be the actor in costume is already a strong enough artistic proposition to create a show graphic. Great to learn about Photopea. I'm glad to hear that, Denise. Have a play. It's really, really nice. If you have access to Adobe Photoshop is basically the same as Photopea. It's just paid, and maybe it's a little bit faster. But I used Photopea for years before I managed to get a student access to Adobe Photoshop. Um, I'll pause actually before we continue, just again, in case there are any questions or any thoughts from anybody who's dialed in. Good.
No? There's
Great.
any questions in the chat? No? I think they just love hearing your voice, Betty.
Rueful laughter. Can you see my screen where it says tells a story?
Yep.
So continuing on this idea of, ooh, how do I create a show graphic that tells a story? Um, I'm currently also, um, struggling with this and also working on this right now. So recently I did a performance at the Barbican, which is the one that Kakilang and I were collaborating on. It's called Prayers for a Hungry Ghost. And when we were doing the performance at the Barbican, they all really only needed a show image. So it didn't need to have any typeface or whatever. It just needed kind of a central image, which actually I should show maybe. But we are going to be bringing the show to Bristol. And in order to do that, I think we are going to have to create a show image, which means that, that hero image needs to have a title treatment and so on and so forth. So that's also something that I'm working on right now. In order to do that, I think this show particularly, it's horror from the title, Prayers for a Hungry Ghost. It's about the myth of hungry ghosts, and it's sort of about this family drama that takes place basically in hell, where the denizens are kind of forced to relive certain moments in their lives when they chose their own suffering. So it's very expressionistic, it's horror. So, sorry, one moment, I'm trying to find that hero image. I basically went to Pinterest and started looking at horror movie posters and other images that I feel feels right. Um, I will also show, so this was the hero image that we ended up going with. So as you can see, there's a bit of a resonance between the hero image and also the images that ended up going into my mood board on Pinterest. Yeah. Just gonna quickly check in the chat.
Yeah,
Oh,
to do.
that's
Yeah.
very kind. I'm glad you feel that way. So, I'm just trying to find my presentation again. Yeah. So, again, always go back to this question of what universe, world, or genre are you in? What other theater shows or films or music albums are similar to the experience that I wanted to create in the show? Presumably, Tallulah, you were at the show, so probably you can kind of sense why, based on what the performance is, why some of these images that are kind of very disorienting, very, very much horror adjacent, but also a little bit campy, why it kind of feels right for the show. So that's another tool that you can use, is especially if your show is very, very stylistically oriented or alludes to an existing visual style or genre, make a mood board. Then, based on that mood board, once you've created something you feel excited by, start asking yourself some questions. What visual signifiers are common in this world, right? Obviously, from looking at this image, red. The color red is such a hero in the visual language. Another one is the text. There's something about the text being very disoriented. Like it's often sideways, it's often crooked. So there's
Mm.
something there that's quite interesting. Second to red, the other primary colors feel like it's white and black. There's also something about, sorry, I'll go back to the previous one where you see more images. Something about human bodies and the silhouette of
Mm.
humans that also potentially feels really, really appropriate. Something else, the text feels very grungy. Um, so basically, based on some of those questions that you ask, also something else that I'm noticing is there's something about faces and the expressions on the faces of the humans, quite exaggerated expressions that also feel appropriate. So based on that, you can um, make two visual decisions that are gonna be super impactful on creating a show graphic. The first one is a color palette, and the second one is the font. It really can be just as simple as an image that you take on your phone with good lighting, in character, treat it with a strong proposition in terms of colors and with a good font. You can already have a really strong show graphic. I mean, that's all my show graphics are personally, is just a shot in character with a strong choice of color palette and a strong font. This is a resource that you can go to. It's called colorhunt.co. If you're like me and you always dress in all black because you don't know how to match colors, this is really, really useful. They can show you popular color combinations, including contrasting ones. You can also choose certain themes, like you can choose vintage or retro or neon. And again, in terms of the color palette, I would always advise you to, again, go off of the mood board, um, night, and so on and so forth. Um, then Yeah, so actually, sorry, just to go a little bit deeper into this, if you think about also some of the great show graphics we've seen, they also have really strong color palettes. So probably something like Cabaret had kind of a gold-ish
Mm.
color palette, something like that. Um, Something like just the Jessica Ashkenazi one was really bright. It was like red and yellow, kind of circusy. Um, Also, another pro tip, look at some of like the venues you like, or if you think about, oh, what's the dream venue I want my show to be in? That, if you go to that venue's website and look at the show graphics, a lot of the times it will tell you a lot as well about what color palettes you want to approach. Something like Soho Theater, for example, all their shows use kind of really strong neon colors. Or if you go to the, um, you know, um, omnibus, that's going to be different as well. Or if you look at something like the Coronet, again, they have a really, really different color palette. So that maybe can be useful. The second one is what font or typography are, again, appropriate for the world of the show. A useful tool that you can use is this website called thefont.com. It's free, and basically you can um, try to download kind of a custom font that is beyond, what's available to you on just on Photopea or just on or whatever word processing software you have. And they have a lot of kind of different categories. They've got some racist categories as well. It's always fun. Um, a nice trick also is you can type your text here. So maybe I want to type the title of my show. Prayers for a Hungry Ghost. And I would try to see, for example, horror. It's a lot of dingbats, of course. So actually, maybe I don't want to do horror. Maybe that's a little bit too in the nose. Maybe instead I'll go eroded. That's starting to feel more right. Or maybe let's see, distorted. There's also something about finding a little bit of tension, right? If the image is already quite scary, maybe I want to go a little bit easy with the font. Like something like this is really nice. Marola. So if I like it, I'll just download it. Of course, it's a little bit different for everybody in terms of what um, what operating system and so forth you use, but I use a Mac and it's pretty easy to install fonts, or yeah, you can look up basically how to do that for your own operating system. But downloading a font and uploading it is super duper easy. So there, choosing a strong font or typography. Are you seeing my presentation?
Hmm.
Okay, cool. Great. Yes, a pro tip is that just a really strong font and title treatment that you keep consistent can be a really strong a really strong proposition. Maybe a lot of you already knew this, but I didn't know this until several months ago, and I thought it was really useful. But even thinking about the difference between a serif and a sans serif, a serif has, that thingy, that feature, that decoration. And generally, this is kind of the two main worlds within typography. Serifs always feel a little bit more timeless. They feel a little bit more serious, whereas sans serif feels more contemporary. So even starting with asking yourself, oh, for this show, is it a serif or a sans serif title treatment? And going from there. Moving on. Any thoughts on typography before we move on? Or anything you want to share, Sandy? Just checking in.
No, I think font and image, like a partner in marriage, they do go have to go really well together to make it work. So no, I think that's great.
Hmm.
And then yeah, we've got a comment on the chat saying, yeah, color hunt and the font, amazing. First
Yeah.
heard of these. So, they really appreciate our audience today, really appreciate your free resources, Betty. So that's great.
Yeah, I think there's something about the spirit of creative anarchism and self-organization that is what I love so much about fringe theater and taking that into marketing because really, again, it's of course great to have an expert like you here, Sandy, today. But if you can't have an expert, just do what you can because there is a lot that you can do.
Definitely.
Next, going into informing. Oh, let me see if there are any questions.
Oh, there's a question, Betty,
How
from
did I
Yen.
find these?
Mm.
Honestly, I can't remember. I've been using the font literally since I was a teenager, fucking around on Photoshop. They've been around for so long, actually, the font. Yeah. Color hunt, I think I actually Googled um, color matching because I'm really bad at matching colors. So perhaps the takeaway is if it doesn't exist or if you don't know about it, maybe Google it and you'd be surprised what websites you find. Moving to the next part, but also at the same time, thank you, Yen, for the questions. If you have any other questions, please put it in the chat. We'll eventually get to it. Hi, not sure if this has been touched upon. I was wondering if there's a standard size or measurement for the poster for printing, publishing consideration. Yes, I will get to that. Can we add fonts to PhotoPay? Hmm, that is a good question. I think you can.
think you can.
Yeah, I think you can. You can upload font.
Mm.
Or if not, you can always do your title treatment like on a even on a kind of word processor and then use a magic wand to cut around the if we have time in the end, I'll show you how to do it. That's a little bit of a
A
very
flash.
very black market kind of solution, but we'll check it. Right. Let's talk about informing audiences on how to engage with your show. Um, this is a little bit of material I took actually from the last kind of digital toolkit session that we did, which is called Fuck Branding. And it's all about kind of finding um, uh, an identity, both kind of a visual identity, but also an overall artistic identity for your website and for your assets and so forth. This is actually available for you to watch. It's on my website. I think we had done this session in very similar style to this last year, but I'm taking this material a little bit from that session, which is basically, I think ultimately what helps is if you have a really clear style or tone to your practice, if you have that, you can just apply it to your show graphic. A metaphor that I always use with this is like if you have a really, really like great chili oil and you know whatever you eat, if you add that thing, it'll be delicious. It's the same if you already have a really strong proposition of what your style and your tone is for your practice and for your company. You want it to convey who you are and what makes you unique. It should also create a sense of credibility. Also, it should be quite accessible. I would say it should be understandable to a 16-year-old. So how is that applied within kind of theater making and especially in French theater? I would say if you want to kind of figure out what that is, your style, your tone in your practice, you should ask yourself, like, what's the kind of art that only I can make? What do I contribute to the conversation? How am I different? You also want to ask your friends, like, what words would you use to describe me as a person or to describe my artistic practice? And what would you say sets my practice apart? Also, look around and see what are works of art, films, even fashion brands, Instagram accounts that you admire. And make a mood board based on that. This is different. It's not a mood board for your show, it's a mood board for your company. So there's also the style of the company and also the style of the work. And ideally they should be reasonably aligned, I think. So again, showing how it's applied, at least for me with Kiss Witness, is the best way that I found to describe what we do is I use theater to create spaces of belonging for people who don't have it in real life. We have 3 shows now. Each show stylistically is quite different, atmospherically is quite different, but what's the same is that it does this. The work always brings people into a world that feels quite unfamiliar, and it's always speaking to a lived experience that is historically marginalized. We also tend to work with speculative fiction and certain genres like horror and science fiction. And certain words keep coming back in terms of the way that people describe our shows. They say it's dark, it's mysterious. People often say it's disturbing. People say it's both grotesque and ugly, but also very beautiful and also darkly funny. So I try to kind of really think about that, for example, even when we created the website. So maybe to give a brief example and a walkthrough. Okay, I'm out. So actually, this website used to be white, but then the producer that I work with said, actually, it doesn't work that well that it's white because so much of the show is about the shows and so far about darkness. So then it became, images on black instead. A lot of our work is very visual, and so it made sense that the first image is a kind of gallery of a lot of our different shows. Um, there's kind of deep jewel tones, like deep reds and deep blues that again feel very much present in the work. At the same time, there's kind of tone of unseriousness with the website, which again feels very us. Like Complicity wouldn't do this because we're not Complicity, obviously. Um, Little fun fact while we're here, there's a page called Resources. And there you can see the on-demand video for fuck branding or how to explain what do you do to your nosy auntie. So if you do want to kind of learn more about, okay, how can I figure out the identity of my company a little bit better, you can go to that. Let's go back to this presentation. Right. I know we're slowly running out of time and I do want to get to people's questions. So Yeah, style of the, whoa, that's not what I was trying to do. Um, Flip. Okay. So style and the company and style of the show. It should be aligned. So this is an example. Chloe and Natasha, great performers. They have two shows. One is called What If They Ate the Baby, which is sort of 1950s housewives slowly kind of going crazy. And then there's another show called And Then the Rodeo Burnt Down, which is kind of cowboy adjacent. But you see here how um, there are two different shows, but it's made by the same company. And so there's a kind of common style or tone across both. There's the performers. Um, so it's clearly, going to be two performers. The title is kind of quite provocative. There's a sense of something that is kind of period, but being treated in a very contemporary way. So also really strong color choices. This color palette is like a pastel, but somehow I think pastels are always a little bit difficult, but they've actually, I think, made it really, really attractive. And the other one is kind of a red and black. Um, okay, next. Informing the audiences on how to engage with your show. This is a really obvious one, but one can lose track of this. I lose track of this, which is just make sure that the audience is clear on what it is. There should be clear information. When you think about this show, like somebody had asked a question about print and posters. Think about where are you going to put up these posters? If it's going to be put up in a theater, or if you're in Edinburgh Fringe and it's full of posters of theater shows, they'll probably know it's a theater show. But if you're going to put it up at a local business, for example, you do need to make sure that people know it's a theater show. And how is that conveyed? Maybe make sure that you have, the logo of the theater, which is maybe reasonably well recognized. You should have information about the dates and the address, QR codes. It should have a clear call to action, like book your tickets now. Really think about the context. Otherwise, people are going to go like, is it a theater show? Is it cake? Is it? Sandy and I had like quite an interesting conversation before this, which is sometimes it's so because we're artists, right? Sometimes you just want to go with like a really strong illustrated image. I did this in the first iteration of Stamping in the Graveyard, but then you realize even though you have this really, really, yeah, here's a good example actually. This was an image that we used for the concept album of Stamping in the Graveyard. We could use it for the show. I mean, it looks great, but at the same time, it doesn't tell you that it's going to be a theater show, it doesn't tell you what genre it's going to be, how many performers, it doesn't really tell you how I'm going to feel when I go. So in that sense, it's not really the most useful way to market the show. Um, so to the question that was asked, um, we're getting to the end of our time, but I wanted to make sure to go through some like quite tangible best practices in terms of print design. So Shannon asked, not sure if it's been touched upon, is there a standard size or measurement for the poster for printing and publishing consideration? So I would say the most important thing is just make sure that you've designed it at a high enough DPI or a high enough resolution. This just ensures that if you print it like a big size, it's not going to turn out pixelated. Generally, if you make sure that the image is A3 at 300 dpi, it'll be fine. You should design at the actual print size. Generally, this would be A3. In my case, sometimes in a case that, again, you are going to Edinburgh Fringe, for example, and you're paying for outdoor, they're going to tell you the specific resolutions for the media that you're buying. But generally, if you have a design that's A3, 300 dpi, it's going to be high enough resolution. The third one is choose CMYK for print, not RGB. What is CMYK? What is RGB? They're just slightly different color systems, but CMYK is the one that they use in print. I always make the mistake of designing in RGB, but it's not the end of the world because you can just export it as an image and then as a whole when it's already done. Um, what do you call it, transform it into CMYK. There are online tools to do this as well, or you can do it on Photoshop. It's not going to be a problem if you translate it from RGB to CMYK once it's already done, but if it's kind of a file with layers, then it's going to be problematic. Sorry. Again, with print, don't use more than 2 or 3 typefaces. It'll just look quite messy. I would even say just use 2. Thirdly, especially again, if you're designing for an actual size, for an A3 or an A4, A5, you have to be really careful. Just make sure it's legible. Just have a
Mm.
think when it actually comes up, am I going to be able to read it without, a magnifying glass? Any other questions on print design?
Not in the chat.
Right. So for show general best practice for um, graphic design. So in the world of graphic design, if you're doing social media ads, if you're doing also sending your image to different venues, all of whom use different sizes and so forth, the sizes just keep changing. So the best way to work around this is just have separate files for the show graphic and the title treatment. Don't have them baked in together. If you have separate files, you can, if they need a kind of strange dimension, you can just kind of compose them together. Um, yeah, I would say the challenging thing with graphic design is that they have different sizes for everything. Generally, these are I would say the ones that I would use the most. Instagram post is 1080 by 1080. Ooh, actually, that doesn't feel right because Instagram posts are not a perfect square now. It's like
Yeah, they
slightly
convert it.
portrait.
Yeah. They have option now as to fit in the grid or overlay.
So yeah, maybe fact check me, but use the correct sizes. That's all. Um, Test your image on mobile because 80% of viewers will see it on a small screen. Again, just bearing in mind legibility. With social media, also always include a clear call to action. When I used to work in online marketing, this is a weird lizard brain thing. If you have a call to action, it just will perform better. People will just do it more often. It's strange, but apparently it's statistically true. Also, of course, images and videos work best because it just conveys much more about the show. Hot take, not everybody will agree with me. I think don't use rehearsal videos and photos if it's going to feel very different from your show. I think if it's going to feel quite similar to your show, if your show is something maybe quite text-based, maybe the actors are and the characters aren't super heightened, it's contemporary, great, use rehearsal videos and photos. It might work well. Again, everybody has a different um, experience. For me, I think because my shows are quite heightened, they're quite stylized. I generally would only use rehearsal videos and photos as promos on social media. Again, contextualized, but I wouldn't use it, for example, for marketing assets. I would even think twice about putting it on social media, to be honest. I think we did very, very few rehearsal videos and photos for Prayers for a Hungry Ghost because, again, the show is just so heightened that it just kind of feels like, oh, it's not gonna put the show on its best foot forward to have photos that are from the rehearsals. But perhaps, Andy, if you have any other experience.
Yeah, I would suggest that if you do use rehearsal video and show and images, maybe stick with Instagram stories. So you're creating some sort of narrative. This is what you're doing. This is like actors are working best, doing some movement, just little glimpse of what they getting, and making sure that they know it's rehearsal is not the end end product is really quite important.
Yeah, you're right. I think, when people do kind of more interviews and things like that, I guess it contextualizes it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think it works really well on TikTok channel when if there's a bit more fun rehearsal or sometimes, it doesn't go right and people just burst into like laughters and stuff. They work really well as in general in TikTok. But I think I wouldn't put it on the grid unless it's really, showing a very different showcase of your
Yeah,
performance.
yeah. Um, moving on, we'll be running a little bit over. Just one more tip. Again, this is a free tip. Adobe Express. There's a lot of things you can do on Adobe Express for free. Once you go there, have a play around the templates. You can basically create your own template and it just cuts so much time. Where's my stuff? Your stuff. That's what I did with, this even this event. I have a template. So the next time I have an event, I'm just going to go December 8. I change the title and there's the layer where it has the image. I'll just change this image and I have something that is specific to my brand that I can immediately use. And they have a lot of templates you can browse through. You just go to templates. They have a lot of filler templates. You can see something like this that is very, very generic, for example. But once you customize it, you can make it your own. Change the colors to be specific to, again, your style and your company. Delete this weird squiggly pattern and change it to an image that's yours. And already, again, you have something that can be posted on social media to announce an event or anything like that. Okay, we're really running short on time. Ugh.
I think the other good one is Canva. I think Canva is also very friendly and have lots of templates as well. So
Yeah. Correct. Yeah, you can also use Canva, if not Adobe Express. Wow, that was a lot of information. If you do nothing else, this is my suggestion. You can create a mood board for your company identity that can be really useful. So you create a stronger visual identity for moving forward. Choose a font that works for you and create a color scheme. And last but not least, have fun with it. Questions. Um, Especially because, again, we have a real life authentic marketer here in the room. Sandy's with us. So I just want to give some space in case anybody had any questions. Um, Otherwise, I'll
I
start.
also have a really interesting quick tips for you all is use ChatGPT. A lot of the time you can think about a design or a concept you're not sure about. Use ChatGPT for a prompt to say, okay, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think I am getting? What sort of target audience will fit into this kind of description? If this color palette match what I'm trying to do, it's just see ChatGPT as like your little assistant. And sometimes, for me as a real life marketer with Kakilang, I use ChatGPT to create a design brief, and then I could shorten some of my vision into some sort of mock-up, and then I then send the job to a real graphic designer to speed the process up a bit. And it's been really helpful at Kakilang. So yeah, I thought I will share it with you guys too.
Thank you for that tip.
So
So
any
maybe
questions?
I'll start us off with a question, Sandy. Um, a lot of the times, at least for me anyway, it's like not common to have a marketing budget. But if you had, for example, 50 quid, what would you spend it on and why?
For £50, I don't think it's even worth spending on social media campaign because there's just not enough money to run a social media ad. I will probably use £50 if it depends if you want to engage your audience in some sort of giving you a response or something, to do a kind of prize engagement. If not, I will be throwing things like follow us, like this post in a chance of getting £50 off to see a prize or some sort of show, you liked and stuff. Because for £50, I would like to get more engagement, more followers into our company, and so they know what we're about instead of trying to do a call of action, book these tickets. Because we believe in growing our community for a long time instead of just one off.
That's a good point. So basically, make sure you have like a strong account and then you promote basically your.
Yeah, followers, gain more followers. Is any question? Don't be shy, people. We're looking at the chat.
Another question maybe is what are your thoughts on kind of show trailers? Again, it's very problematic when you're trying to promote something that's a premiere, so you don't really have a strong video asset, or if you do have one, it's not exactly going to be what the show is going to look like. Any kind of tips or
Yeah, that's constantly things we do in Kakao. We'll keep it short. I think a couple of years ago they said, "Oh, keep it under 1 minute," but now it's actually 10 seconds, maximum 30 seconds. So I will use maybe a different techniques. If there's only just a little bit of videos you have, just use point of view or with like caption, asking, "Oh, I wonder what a day of the life of Betty is like in the rehearsal room," and then have a little bit of clips and then go to see more, find out and see it for yourself. I also think because I am not great at editing trailer, but I've learned a little tri tips on TikTok. Even if you don't use TikTok as everyday user, but if you sign up to TikTok and you upload a video, there's an option to say auto cut and they give you tons and tons of option, turning like really short little clips you have into loads of different style with different music, and then you can download it and then you can then upload into whatever platform you want. And there's an app out there to remove TikTok, the little logo and the corner as well. So that's worth playing along as well if you have time.
mm-mm-mm. Nice. Yeah,
I
those are
feel like
all.
everybody's been very polite.
I think it's also fine if people don't have any. To follow
Oh.
on Betty's budget, how much budget would you suggest to be ideal for a social media campaign? And if there's any strategy on timeline?
I would say it's not worth doing social media ad campaign if it's just like a week to go. Social media is something that will take more of analyzing, trends and pattern. I would say about 3 weeks. And I think minimum I've done a campaign on social media is about £300. But I will leave it longer. I will test different material access, whether it's just a show image, carousel of different images and trailer. And I would test it out for 3 weeks, putting your budget aside for it. A minimum of £300.
Um, I guess to maybe to I have very
Betty?
little to. Oh, can you still see my share? Yeah. Actually, I can just stop sharing. Um, How would you say would be ideal for a social media campaign? Because my experience of using any paid social media has always purely been within Edinburgh Fringe,
Mm,
which I think is quite different. I would say my main pushback with social media ads is any kind like if owned an e-commerce company selling toothbrushes online, I would put a tracking pixel so that I would know that if somebody saw my ad and then bought a toothbrush, that I would know and I can track the effectiveness. But you can't do this with theater because
mm,
the website of the venue is never going to let you put a pixel there. And so it does often feel like releasing, your um, kind of media budget into a black hole, not really knowing what's coming back. So I've always found that a bit challenging with social media. Or sometimes if you have a limited budget and you spend it on outdoor, at least you know where it's going to come up. People are passing by. It's going to be beside other shows that are a bit similar. So there's all of those nuances as well.
mm,
Also, I got the feedback when I was putting in the Arts Council application for Prayers for a Hungry Ghost, and I think we there had about £500 budget for ads, and they told us that one of the feedback is that it's too low. They gave us
mm.
the grant anyway, but it said you need to spend much more on marketing.
It is. It's one of those things. One more question for Sandy, if possible. How do you think of successful graphic poster related marketing? A show image, if it's bold and catchy and it's a good graphics poster, it really helped my job. Because it's starting people talking about the show, and then it's just easy to explain more about the show, what's the show's entail, and then therefore translate to ticket sales. So that's really important because if an image is not telling a story about what the show is about, then it makes my job harder to describe. This is exactly what you're getting when you get into the theater. This is the horror and stuff in a copy. And again, with today's world, I think people's attention span are so low. You have to have an image that speak half, if not half, 90% of what the show's about, and then I can just reduce a copy into quite layman's term. So I think it's really important. But again, there's no right and wrong. You just have to test it out and knowing your market, knowing your audience, that's very important.
Nice, thank you. We probably have time for one more question. If there's anything. So I catch, I did manage to check. You can load a font into Photopea.
Hmm.
Can do that. Um, Great. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. I hope this has been helpful. It'll probably take around a week, but we will upload this video onto the website so you can rewatch it if you want. If you want to go back to that little walkthrough of Photopea, um, you're very welcome. I'm glad it's helpful. Also, feel free to slide into our DMs. We're Kiss Witness if you even have some other questions that you didn't get to ask. I hope this has been just very actionable, very easy, and not too overwhelming. And go forth and create. And have a good Monday night, of course.
Thank you guys. Thank you, Betty, for this very practical, yeah, session. Oh, everybody's saying the same thing,
Thank
so
you,
done well.
Sandy, also for coming in with your advice.
Okay, guys.
Thank you.
We see you next time.